Story 1. I have situs inversus, a rare genetic condition in which the organs in the chest and abdomen are positioned in a mirror image of normal human anatomy. Catherine O'Hara and Enrique Iglesias have this condition. Story 2. I recently discovered that I am missing two arteries in my brain. One is rarer than the other, making it quite unusual. Story 3. The X-ray technician said I have exceptionally long lungs, which might explain why I can swim nearly 2 pool lengths underwater. Story 4. I am in the bottom 2% for height in my country, Nepal. When compared to adults in the United States, that places me in the bottom 0.009%. Story 5. I have an unusual enzyme in my saliva that prevents cavities and other dental issues. I have never had a cavity or any teeth problems in my life. To address frequently asked questions. Yes, I have an aversion to latex. Diet. I basically eat the same thing every day. When I am working, I normally eat at the following places. On my days off, I cook similar meals, with the exception that I cannot make my own sushi. Mondays, shrimp tempura and crab sushi. Tuesdays, chicken and shrimp Alfredo. Wednesdays, pizza or fried chicken. Thursdays, Texas Roadhouse chicken fried steak or a bacon cheeseburger. Weekends, lobster mac and cheese. Combo fried rice without vegetables. Chicken fried lobster tail po' boy. Physique. I consume too much sugar. I am 6 feet tall, weigh 175 pounds, and can press 225 pounds about 6 times on a good day. Currents rate. Up until the past 36 hours, I think my condition is rare but not as rare as one might think. It may be about 1 in 1 million instead of 1 in 10 million. I have encountered a few people online with similar dental advantages and one other person with a higher resting metabolism causing increased body temperature. I have been approached for studies and asked to donate my body to science, but I have always declined. I don't think spitting in someone's mouth would pass on the trait. The big question: how did you find out? While in the military, I had to visit the dentist to have my wisdom teeth pulled. It was a bloody mess, and the wisdom teeth were rock solid. They had to be cut into 4 pieces. The dentists were confused because my mouth was clean and had no issues, but the gums had a significant amount of blood, and the teeth were unnaturally hard and dense. They conducted numerous tests suspecting something more serious. It ended up being identified as an enzyme along with some genetic marker abnormalities. I didn't pay much attention to it growing up. We didn't have the means for dental care, so it was never an issue. There were several factors from my youth that seemed to connect, such as the palatability of foods, allergens, and my naturally strong teeth and overall oral health. I also rarely got sick, which may be due to the bacteria or enzymes in my mouth and gut. In 2005, I did not think to keep this information handy. I'm sure it's buried somewhere in my military medical records. Story 6. I had a very rare heart condition and was the oldest person the hospital had performed surgery on. It was a challenging experience. I would rate it a 2 out of 10 and would not want to do it again. Story 7. I am nearly 60 and still have 20/15 distance vision. My optometrist was shocked and envious. My natural vision was better than what he could achieve even with glasses or contacts. Story 8. I have the largest and most intricate sinus cavity known to medical science. I was in the emergency room for an extremely painful cyclical migraine. After a head CT scan and an MRI, I was laying in the room when a doctor and nurse came in and asked if it was okay for some people to enter and look at my charts. A group of doctors from various floors of the hospital crowded into my room to examine my sinus cavity images. They were in awe and excitedly discussed how extraordinary it was, noting that they had never seen anything like it. It resembles moose antlers and a complex cave system covering much of my face and extending past my forehead. Story 9. I can see more ultraviolet light than most people because I don't have my eye's natural lens. No, it's probably not healthy for my retinas. Story 10. I have 1 extra lumbar vertebra. I have no issues with it. Due to my family history of brittle bones, I was sent for bone density measurements after having my first child. The radiologist noticed the extra vertebra and was very enthusiastic about it. I recall he mentioned that it was a mutation found in less than 5% of people. Note: my memory is not very reliable. Story 11. I was born with a malformed stomach. According to my gastroenterologist, it is shaped like a banana. I rarely feel hungry and can only eat small meals, or I become nauseous. Story 12. I have an impressive immune system. In 30 years, I have only been sick 3 times. Twice with strep throat as a child and once with food poisoning as an adult. I never contracted COVID-19, consumed 2 jars of the E. coli contaminated Peter Pan peanut butter, and was fine. I have never received a flu shot and have never had the flu. I also do not experience hangovers. I have never taken a sick day or missed a day of school, and I have no allergies. I would choose this over almost any other genetic gift. Story 13. My former podiatrist told me that I have structurally fascinating feet. I said, "Strange, right?" And her reply was, "We don't use the word strange here. I have unusual feet, wide with a high arch." Story 14. Whenever I get just a bit warm or hot, my entire body develops a rash. I get hundreds of red dots everywhere. They disappear after about 2 hours of not being warm. It has never stopped me from anything, including saunas or hot vacations. I'm a bit embarrassed, but I don't let that get in the way of achieving my goals. Story 15. My mom is an alcoholic and drank while pregnant with me. I found out I have a rare birth defect related to her drinking and was born with only one functioning ovary. The left side of my reproductive organs is mutated and fused to my uterus. I ended up having identical twin girls completely unplanned and have lived a normal life otherwise. Story 16. I have incredibly diverse breasts in terms of size. My left breast is quite large, while my right is noticeably smaller. When I wear a shirt, my chest appears to slant, starting off big on the left and then getting smaller on the right. I have seen doctors about this and had tests done which came back completely normal. It's frustrating, but not entirely common. I wish I knew someone else who has a similar experience, but I have never encountered anything like it. To maintain symmetry, I have to bind them because I would need excessive padding to make the smaller one closer in size to the larger one. Story 17. I carry a higher count of white blood cells than most people, which allows me to fight off infections and illness more easily. Story 18. I was born with a common condition known as hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which eventually allowed me to turn my head nearly all the way around like an owl. I had to undergo surgery to secure my skull to my spine, as it was starting to detach. Story 19. I have wisdom teeth that grew in and fit my mouth perfectly. I will never need them to be removed unless my dental hygiene is non-existent. Story 20. I'm a man with 3 nipples. My bonus nipple is 1/3 the size, positioned a little lower, and has its own swirly hair halo. My wife named him Third Nipple Fred. Story 21. I can lick my elbow. I don't know how rare it actually is, but I always read when I was younger that it was impossible. Story 22. I can make my ears rumble, producing a thundering sound that only I can hear. I have heard that not many people can do this, but since they haven't tested a large group, it might not be as rare as it seems. Story 23. I have spina bifida myelomeningocele and hydrocephalus, so my body cannot naturally regulate spinal fluid in my brain. Therefore, I need an implanted device to manage the drainage of brain fluid in my head. Story 24. I have central heterochromia. My eyes have literal rings of color. Brown in the center, amber, then blue-gray on the edge. All my optometrists comment on it. Story 25. I was born without an appendix. My eyes are green, and I am a woman over 6 feet tall. I am naturally blonde and have O-negative blood. I'm just a weirdo. Story 26. I have a calcified salivary duct under my tongue. I don't notice it unless I press really hard. On X-rays, it appears as a random floating bone. I am colorblind, but it's different in each eye. Normally, it isn't an issue, but certain colors make my brain feel overwhelmed, almost like a strobe effect when switching between colors. When I close one eye, I see a greenish-brown. When I close the other, I see an orange-red. With both eyes open, I feel dizzy and nauseous. This problem only occurs when 2 different colors, perceived differently by each eye, are on the same object, often in children's books with bright colors. Story 27. I have a neurological condition where, when my system gets stressed, wires cross and I start vomiting every 15 minutes for days on end or until I take a strong sedative to knock me out. I basically have to shut my brain off and turn it back on again like a broken computer. Story 28. I have a higher bone density than the average male my age. Doctors have commented on my bones looking particularly dense on X-rays. I have also sustained several injuries that I was told should have resulted in broken bones, but I walked away with only bruises. During my annual physical, most doctors comment that I weigh more than they would have guessed. Through my own research, I discovered that there is a generic quirk that can cause increased bone density, which is more likely to be found in individuals of Northern European descent. A significant portion of my ancestors on both sides of my family came from that region. Fortunately, I do not seem to experience most of the side effects, such as pinched nerves, just a slightly greater durability. Story 29. I was getting a security clearance and being fingerprinted. The person taking my prints looked at the paper, grabbed my hand, and examined my fingerprint. He then made a disapproving sound. I asked what was wrong, and he told me never to commit crimes without gloves because he could identify my fingerprints from an entire cabinet of files in about 30 seconds, or he could simply recall my print and remember me. I looked at my print and understood what he meant. Story 30. I have a connective tissue disorder, and in at least 8 places in my body, my own body is kinking or compressing various arteries, veins, and parts of my digestive system. My styloids, the bones in my neck and jaw area, have been growing abnormally and are compressing my jugular veins when I turn my head. I have had 2 surgeries to treat 2 of these compressions, but I need many more surgeries to hopefully address the rest. There's also a significant chance my stomach and other organs sink substantially into my pelvis when I am upright, causing numerous health issues. Additionally, I have leaking blood vessels and a dysfunctional lymphatic system, so a lot of fluid from my bloodstream seeps into surrounding tissue, resulting in low blood volume and significantly dropping my blood pressure. This body feels like a total lemon, and I would like a refund. Story 31. Not a feature of my body, but more so my heritage. I am half Russian and half Ugandan. I have never met a single person with the same mix. Story 32. My ears are foldable. I've never met anyone else who can do it, and they tend to say it hurts if they try. First of all, I can fold just about any part of my outer ear and touch it to my ear canal opening, and when my ears are cold, that feels good for some reason. But it gets better. I can fold my ears backward to make a point out of the top and then curl that point down into my ear canal while my tragus holds it in place. The result is that I can walk around looking like I have unusual ears. Can hold for up to a minute if I don't move my jaw. Story 33. I am a natural blonde at 41. Most blonde hair turns darker once people reach their 20s, but I still have mine. I am not Scandinavian. Story 34. I was the first person in my country to have a unique technique for reconstructing my thumb joint, which remains a rare solution used by only a few people. While this technique is applied elsewhere in the body, it is not typically used on thumbs. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so the standard use of my own tendon would not have resolved the issue. My surgeon located a doctor in the United States who had performed a few surgeries using this alternative technique, and I became the first patient for my surgeon. My bionic thumb, and I thank him endlessly for his dedication and effort. Story 35. Genetics. When there have been fewer than 50 recorded cases of what I have, I would guess that counts as rare. The result is deformed limbs and mobility that is horrendous. Story 36. I don't know how rare this is, but I have been almost the exact same size since I was a teenager. I am 51 and still have jeans from high school that I wear occasionally. I also had a baseball-sized brain tumor at 21, which is probably rarer, honestly. Story 37. My eyes, according to some, have central heterochromia. Around my pupil, there is gold, a green iris, and a blue border. Story 38. Not sure about the rarity, but I was born with an imperfect anus. Essentially, I was born without an anal opening. I had a colostomy bag as a child, but it has since been corrected. I often joke that I was born not caring and that the doctors didn't like that, so they created a new opening for me. Technically, I have a surgically created anus. Story 39. My pinky fingers stop at my first knuckle. They are effectively mini pinkies. They also hurt to bend and are useless, but oddly adorable and creepy looking. Story 40. I'm too old to accomplish this now, but as a 6'3", 300-pound college lineman, I could perform a cartwheel into a round-off into a backflip. I could also do a cartwheel into a split the side-to-side way. Story 41. I came here for comments from people with color-changing eyes. They are not here yet, but I will wait. Story 42. I have lost count of the number of rare diseases I have been diagnosed with. Not sure if it counts as a feature of my body, more a feature of my conception, but I was an in vitro fertilization baby when it was still considered a miracle to make it past infancy. Story 43. My sister, my oldest daughter, and I cannot wear a watch. The battery fails within a few days. A new battery results in the same issue. Story 44. If anything, it's my blood. About 6 to 7% of the world population has type O negative blood. Is anyone else here? Story 45. I have Crohn's disease and needed to have an ileectomy performed. This was basically a resection where they cut out 12 inches of my intestines, specifically at the junction of the small and large intestines. The procedure included the cecum and appendix. According to the surgeon, I had the longest appendix he had ever seen, measuring about 6 inches. I had never known how long an appendix typically is, as the average length is about 3 to 4 inches. So that was an interesting fact. I also have a skin tag on the tip of my penis. Story 46. I have a genetic mutation in my collagen that makes everything super stretchy. Skin, joints, and tendons. It is challenging for my health, but I can contort into most positions and have many party tricks, which is fun. Story 47. My wife's pupils are always dilated. I always have to inform medical staff so they do not become alarmed, especially during the time we were in a car accident. Story 48. I just went to the eye doctor, and they told me I have unusually long eyelashes for a man. So, thank you. Story 49. I was born with fragile bones and delicate skin. Every morning I break my arms, and every afternoon I break my legs. Story 50. I have a halo mole, which is a regular mole with a ring of white around it. The National Institutes of Health state that about 1% of the population has it. Yes, I get checked by a dermatologist regularly. Story 51. Involuntary movement of my eyes. People often asked why they move, but I never knew until I became more involved with my eye health. Story 52. I am missing my inferior vena cava, a major vein that runs from the legs through the pelvis. A doctor once said, "But that's incompatible with life." I just smile and wave. Story 53. I have a long tongue. I'm almost 40, and I am in much better shape than most people in their prime. Story 54. I am 55 years old and have never had a cavity. I have never needed any dental work at all, other than regular cleanings, except for one wisdom tooth that was removed because it was erupting sideways against another tooth. Story 55. I have a very rare bone disease called Camurati-Engelmann disease. Only about 300 people in the world have it. Causes a lot of pain. Story 56. My spine is curved at 90 degrees. I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was 15. I wore a brace in high school, but it didn't correct the curve. I had a 12-level spinal fusion at 21 and wore a body cast for 6 months. Unfortunately, the fusion didn't take, and the rods and wires in my back became corroded. I had a second 12-level surgery to remove the rods and corroded pieces of wire, and my spine was refused with pelvic bone. Again, I was in a body cast for 6 months, but the fusion still didn't take. Now, at 64, I have to use a power wheelchair. My legs work, but standing and walking hurt so much that I can't do it anymore. The pain becomes so intense after about 10 steps that I need to stop and sit on the floor, wherever I am, to relieve it. Having a 12-level spinal fusion is rare. Having 2 is almost unheard of, and having both fail is unbelievable but true. Story 57. I have hypospadias. Simply put, I have 2 openings on my penis. I learned later in life that these openings can be located anywhere along the shaft of the penis, which can cause complications. However, I am fortunate. Mine are positioned close to each other at the tip. Imagine the regular urethral opening, and then some extra skin that resembles labia majora. There is another opening that performs the primary function. I guess it's pretty unique. 1 in 150 boys is born with it, and 80% of those cases are similar to mine. I grew up thinking all boys had 2 openings. Then, during maturation class, I learned the hard way that this was not the case. I often wish a parental figure or even a doctor had explained to me how I was unique in that regard. Story 58. I have a good metabolism and can eat anything without gaining weight. I do exercise at home, but nothing extreme. Story 59. I am part of the 1 to 3% of the population considered short sleepers and need far less sleep than average. I have never been tested for the gene, despite my sleep doctor's desire to confirm it. Story 60. Evidently, my brain is able to reason, make decisions, communicate, and comprehend complex concepts and information. As an American, the past election proves it is rare. Story 61. I am in the 99.6th percentile for height. I was recently diagnosed with Freiberg's disease, a rare condition characterized by abnormal growth at the end of one of the metatarsal bones in the foot, usually resulting from repeated small fractures. Story 62. I have a double-jointed thumb. It looks like a duck when I flex it. My eyes change from hazel blue to bright green when I cry. My eyelashes appear short, but it's only because they are tipped pale blonde. My body hair also grows in an invisible blonde color. I don't have to shave my legs because one has to be very close to see the hairs. Any adult looking at my leg from standing height should assume there's no hair. However, this makes shaving inconvenient. The hairs are downy, soft, and difficult to see, so the razor often just pushes them out of the way without cutting. I won't know until I get out of the shower and the light hits my legs just right. Waxing doesn't work, as the hairs slip right out of the wax, and I can't layer them off either. I am cross-dominant with my hands. I used to be ambidextrous, but I stopped writing with my left hand because I don't like getting my hands dirty with ink or graphite, so it looks sloppy now. However, I can write backwards with my left hand and have done so for class notes in the past. Story 63. I am legitimately ambidextrous. Whenever I am put with someone new at work, they inevitably comment on my alternating hands when starting intravenous lines, depending on which side of the stretcher I am on. When I used to be a prop maker, this skill came in handy for painting objects at odd angles. Story 64. With enough stretching, I can put my feet behind my head. However, when I do it, I have no balance and tip over like a turtle. Story 65. From 2008 to now, I have only vomited about 7 times. A stomach bug in 2022, food poisoning in 2019, and the flu in 2008. Story 66. I can wiggle my ears, but my oldest son can move his entire scalp. His 2 brothers are ordinary individuals, however. Story 67. You know how the doctor gets you to sit on the bed with your legs swinging off the edge? Well, my knees do not react when they get tapped with the small hammer just below the kneecap. They never have reacted. Story 68. I am a generic chimera. I have had 2 bone marrow transplants from unrelated donors. I break all genetic tests because I have 3 distinct DNA types in my body. My most recent donor was of the opposite sex. I think it has leveled me out. Story 69. My urethra is in the wrong spot. It doesn't cause too many problems, but it isn't fun to try to urinate in a cup. It is uncomfortable when you have to get a catheter and the nurse accidentally tries to insert it incorrectly. Story 70. I have no sense of smell. If you see me sniffing something, I am gauging how it smells. I am just trying to blend in so you do not think I am strange. Story 71. I have aphantasia, which means I cannot see mental images. I am 64 years old and just found out 2 years ago that 98% of people can close their eyes and visualize images. My husband and children can watch movies in their minds. They can picture places they have been and see all the details. They can visualize people's faces in their minds. I felt a little depressed at first when that realization hit. I am still amazed. It honestly felt like it was a sense I did not possess. Story 72. Breasts, or at least that is what people generally suppose. While I can certainly explain how I acquired them, the condition called gynecomastia is incredibly common. 70% of males experience breast enlargement at some point in their lives. Story 73. I was born with my intestines on the outside, and as a result, I don't have a belly button. I've got a pretty funky-looking scar, though. Story 74. There are many impressive features in my abilities. I have a few that I believe are rare. One is my flexibility without any formal training. My joints bend in ways that usually do not happen for others. For example, I can perform the Neo dodge, lower the Neo, and rise back up with no effort. I can also fit into very narrow spaces and execute the scorpion with ease. I consider this quite rare, and I take pride in it. Additionally, I have a surprisingly large appetite for my frame. For instance, I can eat two 18-inch fully loaded pizzas without much effort or feeling full. No, I don't have tapeworms or any other parasites. I had that checked. I do, however, have what my doctor described as an abnormal metabolism. This relates to how my stomach processes food and how my body uses energy, which is why I do not store much fat. I also do not get drunk unless I drink an entire bottle of hard liquor. I have only been sick 5 times in my entire life. Each time was severe, including one instance shortly after I was born, which was supposed to be fatal. Against all odds, I survived, leaving the doctors astonished. They had given me a 1 in 100 chance of making it through the night. Sometimes, I wish I hadn't survived. Story 75. I have a urethra in my clitoris and do not know why. I also have scars around that area, and in a baby photo from February 2003, there is a V-shaped scar present instead of something else. It is still there, but I do have other anatomy. It seems I may have had some sort of surgery, but when I reviewed my medical records, I couldn't find any information about it. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a separate confidential file explaining the details. When I told my mother, she was confused. I have heard of epispadias, but that condition causes additional symptoms that I do not have. I also identify as intersex and have other rare conditions, such as uterine, vaginal, and ovarian hypertrophy. There is very little information available on these conditions, and whenever I search for them, the results suggest hypertrophy, which is the opposite. I have never had a period but have other signs of puberty. It is odd. Doctors suspect I may have adrenal insufficiency. Story 76. My body can do a backflip. I am not a gymnast. I just tried one day and was able to do it. I can still do it while standing. I am 37 years old. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.